Assalamu alaikum. Let's cook. In one of the previous videos, in the comment section, one of the subscribers asked me if I had ever heard of good old boy roundups and what they were. And I responded, yes, I have heard of good old boy roundups. I actually wrote about or mentioned good old boy roundups in my book, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service, because somebody had told me about them that worked in the same law enforcement agency that I was in. You know, this person was, much older than me. And after that, I actually read about good old boy roundups. Now, these good old boy roundups, they were before my time, but I heard about them. They were before my time in law enforcement. So the good old boy roundup, what was this? This was a annual private retreat that white guys had in law enforcement. It was organized or started up by an ATF special agent by the name of Eugene Reitmeyer. Now, this dude, Eugene Reitmeyer, he started this up in Polk County, Tennessee. Started in the year 1980, and they would have these good old boy roundups on private land near the Ocoee River, Polk County, Tennessee. Again, people. So it started out as a one-night camp out in 1980 for about 55, 60 people. And most of the guys who attended were co-workers of his, or they were guys who were with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms of the ATF. Now, this guy, Eugene Reitmeyer, he said that this is a chance for law enforcement to let your hair down. So what happened is they kept having this thing, and it actually started to grow. And by the 1990s, they would have over 300 people there every year at this good old boy roundup. The roundups were held from 1980 to 1995, again on this location, on this private leased land in Tennessee. Now, the main people who were at this roundup were current or retired federal, state, and local law enforcement officers. So these guys would sit around, they would chill, drink, and have good old white boy fun. You know, they would be out there feeling great about themselves. They would do things like marksmanship skills and have all kinds of peer camaraderie, white peopling. Now, the scandal with this thing came in is because people started to find out what was going on there, So in July of 95, there was an article in the Washington Times and reported that these good old boy roundups were a white only event, and they would have all kinds of racist signs, racist skits, racist t-shirts, and offensive material. And there was a local TV station that aired a home video showing a sign reading "Nigger Checkpoint Area" at this good old boy roundup. They sold merchandise, t-shirts with a picture of Martin Luther King's face on it with the gun sights, from the firearm, from the rear sight to the front sight. They would have a picture of Martin Luther King on that. They had O.J. Simpson with a noose and all kinds of other racist imagery, people. Basic white American peopling. And when certain people heard about it, the Department of Justice heard about it, they started an investigation, okay? And also, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing about this in 1995. This situation got so bad that Bill Clinton had some words about it. Bill Clinton condemned the behavior at these roundups, and when they asked him about federal law enforcement officers at these events and their conduct and the things that they were doing at these events, he said that anyone working in federal law enforcement who thought that this kind of behavior was acceptable ought to think about working somewhere else. And he also described and reported these racist acts at these roundups as sickening. Now, that's what Bill Clinton had to say about these good old boy racist roundups, their little powwows, their get-togethers. But people, we understand that Bill Clinton is a covert white supremacist. Okay, he likes to hide his actions. The people like Bill Clinton, they like to candy coat it so that it tastes good to black people when we eat it, and then ultimately it's bitter just like the other side anyway. That's what, he's a covert white supremacist. But believe it or not, based off of what Bill Clinton did in his past, I think Bill Clinton is the closest to a more of a overt conservative type cracker, in my opinion, based off of his racist policies, his track record, and everything he did. I know a lot of black people like to use their imagination when it comes to this guy, Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton was a super cracker. I mean, but the covert racist liberals, they don't like the loud, overt, obnoxious, conservative, pedophile, racist, conservative guys. They go back and forth. We see that that's still going on to this day. That's what we're seeing right now. But these big racist powwows, these good old boy roundups, they ended around 1995, 1996. as a direct result of it getting so much attention and people speaking out against it and saying all the disgusting things that were going on there. So they actually had about a 15-year run. They ran from 1980 to 1996. And also the Treasury Department banned all its agents from attending these good old boy roundups after this scandal broke. And the Treasury Department is actually where somebody that I know told me about it, worked under the Treasury, because our agency, the U.S. Secret Service, at one point was under the Treasury Department before DHS. So they actually knew all about this stuff. An old school dude told me about that. Then I went and looked it up. But anyway, no more racist roundups on the Ocoee River in Polk County, Tennessee. But keep in mind, just because they canceled this one does not mean they still don't have events like this. You know, they have to. That's American, you know what I mean? They're just probably more covert with it. I mean, white people will always have big racist powwows, and especially law enforcement. And when they have these big powwows, one thing you know that they're not doing, these people are not ever addressing the issues within their community. They'll never make, you know, a certain picture with a gun and target practice of a pedophile or somebody who's making their life difficult on it. You know, they just focus on people that never had anything to do with their lives, people who play no role in anything that they consider bad in their life, people who don't even live in their neighborhoods, black people, you know, and they don't focus on that, what they need to focus on, and just put their attention to stuff like Martin Luther King and OJ, is because these dudes are cowards, you know. They're scared to confront the men who hurt the children, that kill the women, wipe out their whole families, because they know that they're either related to these guys or they can really empathize because they're just like them. These guys are a bunch of I mean, these guys are a bunch of mighty cones, man. That's what it is.
The number one offender type is biological fathers, but by far it is being done by middle-aged Caucasian men.
How about you maggots have a good old boy roundup and address those issues and bring Tim Tebow as a guest speaker? How about that? Okay. Now, people, something else that they have is not a good old boy roundup, but there is National Police Week. You know, it happens every year in May, and it's supposed to be centered around the Peace Officers Memorial Day. It's in May every year. They have it in Washington, D.C. It's a much bigger event than a good old boy roundup ever was. It attracts thousands. And I know because I've been around and I've seen this for years. Never attended, but I was always somewhere like in the area. Like you can see, oh, it's police week. You know, thousands of police officers from all across the USA. Sometimes these guys were even walking around with their weapons like they could, and they really wasn't allowed to in DC. And that's a whole nother story. I can get into that. You know what I mean? But that caused some issues on certain levels. But these guys would just be walking around, you know, going to the festivities, getting drunk. Some of them even getting arrested again, people, you know, by local police, whether it be federal law enforcement, the U.S. Secret Service, DC police or whatever, for doing things that they ain't supposed to do, you know, going to events, getting drunk, walking around. You got guys with big old Texas Ranger hats on, just stuff you never seen before, you know. They're supposed to be there to honor law enforcement officers who died in the line of duty. But I mean, here's my thing. It's not a good old boy roundup, but personally, the way I always seen it is Police Week is like a big racist powwow also. I mean, that's just any gathering of law enforcement. You're going to have mostly all black people. I'm sorry. You're going to have mostly all white guys. You know, you'll have some black people. They'll usually be some old shine buck dancing coons. Most black people who are in law enforcement that got some sense don't even want to be bothered. It's like, I'm not going to that, man. You know what I mean? But, you know, enough of them do. You know, so they're partying it up. And there's always a racist undertone with anything law enforcement and American. That's how it's always going to be. Now, they do have other events as well for black people in law enforcement. Black officers have something called the Noble Conference. It's called the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Now, of course, it's not like a good old boy roundup or the Police Week where you got white people there. This is for black people in law enforcement. And that's the event that they have yearly where all the shine bones and butter biscuit hopefuls go in that are in law enforcement. You know, they have a big old ball and they discuss how they're going to get in the good graces of their white daddy. Probably discussing how they're going to impress one of those guys with the same mentality that go to those good old boy roundups, because anybody that knows black people and law enforcement as a whole not going to do nothing. You know what I mean? Just a bunch of shine bones as a whole. You know, is every black person in law enforcement like that? No, but I'm talking about the overall energy. Just like we could say white police officers are racist, we could say that black people in law enforcement are coons. You know what I mean? Does that mean everyone is one? No, but the energy is on that side. That's what it is. And anybody that knows anything about black people in law enforcement, they'll tell you that. They're not going to do anything. But anyway, this was all about them good old boy roundups. So to the brother in the comments, yes, I heard of them. Disgusting event. They got rid of them, but you know they always got something else. People, get down in the description, link to the book. Also, email list, holla at that, easy.